Halo Season 2 Episode 5 is out, and we're back to the same shit from Season 1. We focus on everything but John. Kwan is magical, she saves the day, all the girls take charge. We get all these side stories that no one cares about. The fall of Reach took place off-screen. The world building is still in tatters, and we spend a lot of time doing nothing with characters that no one gives a shit about. You can have episodes where there's not much action, or no action at all, that are really interesting if the character work is good. The character work in this show has been horrendous for 2 seasons. We do start off with a little bit of action. All of it is bad. It makes no sense. And it ends up being vital to the plot, which is even more ridiculous. We mainly get John dealing with his feelings. Riz retires. Soren and Lara are on a wild goose chase looking for their kid. And then we get Kai introduced at the very end of the episode, stealing Kurt's role from the Ghost of Onyx book, seemingly. And not only did they replace Kurt with Kai, they seem to not understand his role in the book at all. So let's just get into it. We're back with John. He's hurt. They've been abandoned. They don't know what they're going to do. They're still fighting. And then a brute shows up. We get a little bit of banter between Soren and John. At one point, they used the line, just like old times. That line works really well if you care about both characters and they've been separated for a while. Soren's story has been tied to Kwan and kind of its own thing. And then John's had his own story. So it just doesn't really work. It works in something like Mass Effect 2 when Garrus says it to Shepard. Because you've been through the first game together, they've been separated for 2 years, and they get reunited. And Garrus says, just like old times. And because you love both characters, it's awesome. In this show, it's just flat. We get more low-budget fighting, where we see John and Soren shooting, but they don't show them shooting at the same time as the brutes on screen until the very end here. So you're just getting them shooting with their facial reactions or expressions. Of course, the world building just keeps getting destroyed. John got shot in the chest with a plasma pistol last episode. Completely inexplicable. He's still fighting. Then this brute hits where he's standing with a gravity hammer. Doesn't kill him. He just gets knocked off his feet. And he is knocked out for a couple days after this, but he should be dead. Him not wearing armor, being able to withstand a gravity hammer, makes it seem like what's the point of the armor? And also it makes it seem like the brute isn't really a threat. Even in close quarters with a gravity hammer, he doesn't kill any of them. So it nerfs the gravity hammer and nerfs the armor. And again, undermines the threat that brutes present. Kwan and Lara come in and save Soren and John. Don't know how they found them. Don't know how the two of them are operating the ship. Kwan's the hero. Make of this what you will. John's unconscious. He has to be saved by Kwan because, you know, it kind of feels like all John does is get his ass kicked and then have to be saved by somebody else at this point. But whatever. And here we get one of the most nonsensical scenes in the entire show so they can get rid of Riz for nonsensical reasons later in this episode. They're aboard the ship. John's bitching about Vanek being left behind because he doesn't believe he's dead. And Riz runs in, firing 2 pistols. It looks really awkward. We don't see any of the action because they can't afford it, so it's all just in the smoke. And then Riz gets shot in the back, carrying Vanek's dead body that she went back for instead of escaping the planet. Completely retarded. I don't know why they wrote it that way. If you wanted her to get hurt, just have her get hurt in a fight. Show them being overwhelmed and she stays behind or whatever, so she's the last one out. There's a million ways to do it that would have been better than what we got. And of course, like I said, the action is just muzzle flashes and facial expressions because they can't afford anything. And this ends up being like a really big part of this episode too, is what to do with Vanek's body. Because John's dealing with his feelings the entire time, like I said. And he has to be taught a lesson by Kwan, who's a 17-year-old girl. John is being lectured by a child. Because the girls pretty much take over this entire episode. And I'll just go ahead and say, I assume that's more culture war motivated bullshit. Because it sure as hell doesn't make sense for the story. John's asleep, and he's having dreams that are memories of Cortana being removed, and Parangoski was there. We go to Maki and the Arbiter. He's bitching that she didn't let him kill John, and she just says, "Trust me, bro." It's so funny. People on Reddit were defending the scene where she lets him live, because I criticized it for making no sense at all. Because if he was that important, at a minimum, they should have kidnapped him, and they probably should have killed him. So he's bitching. She's like, "Trust me, bro." And then he's questioning her. And they're trying to figure out what to do with Cortana and if it has any value, because they're supposed to go back to High Charity to get punished for their failure. And maybe I'm misremembering, I'm not remembering something. I'm not exactly sure what they failed at. They went and destroyed Reach, got the artifact, and wounded John. I don't know exactly what the failure is. And we get a shot of Maki seeing Reach burn, and she's kind of teared up. Here's a shot of Reach burning. John's asleep for 2 days, so he misses all this. And there's actually a pretty cool shot of them using the plasma beam down the surface. So they got a couple good visuals. That's the praise for the episode. John wakes up. He's concerned about Riz, and he's pissed off at Halsey. And he asks her what she thinks of them, if they're people or are they weapons. And all of this could have been interesting, but it seems like John's only emotion in the show is anger or sulking. I really wish they had given more to this dynamic. They do try to show that Halsey cares about them. She remembers them, their names, where they're from, what they're into. And that's all pretty much from the book. But the Spartans also view her as kind of a mother figure. And this is part of what frustrates Ackerson, is that he feels like they're loyal to Halsey, not the UNSC. But instead, the show just has John, Riz, all of them just kind of hate her. They don't really do like the mixed feelings thing, or where they respect her, but they're upset about what happened to them, or they embrace what happened to them. They're just kind of pissed off. And they're all supposed to be lost, it seems like, in the show. And we get a bunch of Pablo Schreiber shirtless, for all the lady that watch Halo. I can't imagine there's many, but I'm sure they're out there. And this all just feels like it's padded to run time. This episode's an hour long, and really nothing happens. We just get a lot of talking about feelings, not much progress story-wise. And I think this is all just setting up so the final episode, we see that shot of John in the spaceship at the end of the season. I'm assuming they're going to go into Reach's base and then teleport to Halo. I guess we'll see in a couple weeks. And I wanted to show this image because it's funny, but you can see how much John hates her. Like, he tried to punch her in the last season and also tried to kill her with radiation. So their relationship is very one note. He's just super bitter and hates her. And it's frustrating because they try to make him seem super duty bound to being a Spartan, but it doesn't seem like he has any appreciation for Halsey for making him a Spartan in the first place, which is kind of where the interest comes in the books, because they have both of those emotions and they have a lot of mixed feelings. Because you have this kidnapper, mother figure, person in charge of you who also gave you purpose in life against your will, but you ended up being the saviors of humanity and really important. And a lot of the Spartans like being Spartans. They're proud of what they've done and doing their duty for humanity. And all that nuance just gets left out of the show. And then we get like kind of a weird love triangle thing between Maki, Cortana, and John. So she's like yelling at Cortana to come out. Eventually Cortana manifests herself, and Maki's like, what are you to him? And it's like clear that she's jealous. It's so weird. And then she's asking to see John's memories of Halo, and it kind of implies that she's not crazy or making stuff up. And she tells Cortana if they both don't make themselves useful, the Covenant will get rid of them for being useless. This whole plot thread makes like no sense. She was talking down to them in the first season, and she still kind of does in this season. We saw her make the Arbiter not kill an enemy, and now she's like afraid of the Sanshiam or the Prophets. So this whole plot thread makes no sense. And as far as we're aware, she's the only blessed one they have. And they say in the first season that these blessed ones that can use the Forerunner artifacts are like 1 in a billion. So they wouldn't just get rid of her without cause. Not to mention they recovered a really valuable human asset. They took a planet. They got the artifacts back. I'm not even sure what she's supposed to be afraid of. So this whole thing just has no real logic to it. But Cortana ends up saying, no, these are John's memories. They're not for you. And Maki is scared. We get a really weird scene right here where Kwan's talking about staying with Vanek's body every night as if she was close to him. I don't think they've ever met except for when the Silver Team fought the Covenant in her village, and then she never saw him again. So I don't really understand this whole thing. And then John's like, he was a Spartan, now it's just a dead body. So the whole theme of this episode that gets really dragged out is that John needs to accept his grief and acknowledge it before it overwhelms him. This is the kind of thing that I don't know if I'm buying too much. I think somebody like John would grieve differently and very inwardly, because there would be a part of him that's just used to this. He's been fighting for decades. He's lost at least dozens of Spartans and probably hundreds or thousands of regular Marines. Like, something interesting in the book Last Light is one of the rookies has a friend die in the story. And these are just regular soldiers. And Fred leaves her alone to cry and says something along the lines of, I remember the first time that I lost someone that I cared about. And it's kind of this implied thing where the first time it's this really big shock, but then because of their lifestyle, they've learned to accept that that's part of it, and they just deal with it. So this whole thing they're going for, I just don't know if I really buy the premise at all. And not to mention the way that they do it is incredibly dull. And like I said, you've got a child lecturing a 40-year-old grown man. Again, Kwan has lectured John multiple times in this show, starting back with episode 1 or 2 of season 1. They get to Ilaria to look for Kessler and get Riz treatment. Halsey did what she could on the ship, but they didn't have all the tools, so now she's going to do surgery at this little local hospital. And I was wrong about Lara turning into some kind of queen of the pirates. But she ends up being kind of like girl boss bullshit, where she just drags Soren around by the nose after she went and saved him and John and Riz and Halsey and all them. So I was partially correct. So she says, I'm going there. Soren chases after her. They go talk to this guy. They see that a 10-year-old boy was bought or taken in, and they get his location so they can go find him and see if it's their son. And you find out, obviously, in the least surprising twist ever, this guy is essentially a slaver in some capacity. So they go to look for their kid. Kwan's face on screen right now was pretty much me watching this. The shit was putting me to sleep. But we get more of her telling John that he should wear a jacket and let his grief out and bury Vanek because he's able to. And John refuses to acknowledge it. Again, this is all stuff that's kind of straightforward character-wise and gets really dragged out. And the execution is really dull. So there's not really much to say about it. And here we get like full girl boss bullshit. And this is what I was talking about with the women just taking over everything in the story. Soren's like making polite conversation to people and they're riding along to some little village to look for their kid. And Lara just goes off on him. She's shitting on Soren for running away from the Spartan program and shitting on him for running away when their kid got taken. He was abducted as a child, deformed, and they couldn't use him anymore, so they let him go from being a Spartan. And he got tricked and kidnapped by the UNSC again when your kid was stolen. What the fuck are you blaming him for? And she's like, I want you to be sad because I'm sad. And is trying to make him feel the way that she wants him to. Seems like a pretty toxic relationship to me. It's weird because the show doesn't even seem to understand that. The show frames her as being the correct one. And then later on, Soren does get emotional. Not crying, but he's upset. And she hugs him. So it's pretty clear that the show thinks that she's right for doing this. It's fucking wild. And then she takes her wig off here and goes back to her dark hair in the most super obvious elementary level symbolism. She changed her hair, so now she means business. Here's an image on the screen of her with her new hair because she dropped the wig off. So now she means business, motherfuckers. Riz wakes up. She's bitching about how hard her life has been as a Spartan and doesn't see any purpose for why she's doing it still. And Halsey says, you'll just have to try harder because you're fucked up. And then we see her walking with crutches a little bit later on. And John is still made out to be a huge douchebag. And he's like, get up, Riz. Just get up. When she's on fucking crutches after getting shot in the back for going back after a corpse. And this is the type of stuff that's frustrating, is if they wanted to do this payoff, we should have spent more time with her. All we got was she's hurt, John's being mean, she talks to the fat blind Spartan, he says you can do something else, she says no, she has that one dinner with them, and now she's like, fuck it, I'm done. And that's her character arc. That could have been executed so much more interestingly if they had put more time into it. If we had seen her having some happy moments outside of being a Spartan, picking up some hobbies, maybe enjoying a certain book that's supposed to be symbolic of whatever she wants to do, which is apparently just chill with kids. So yeah, really wasted arc, wasted time, lame-ass payoff that they did not earn. Shocking, I know. John's bitching to Halsey that they've been abandoned. He doesn't even know how he can fight back anymore or do anything really because Oni's cut them off. She explains that it's political. And you gotta say, the incompetence to this level of quote-unquote politics is astonishing. Abandoning one of your most expensive, most time-invested, valuable resources. I'm not sure who you're winning political points with by doing that. That's like some shit our politicians would do. Kwan dragged Vanek's body out to bury it. John refused to help because then he'd have to acknowledge Vanek's dead. He ends up going out there. They're doing like a funeral type thing. Halsey says that his name was Vanek, blah, 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 and talks about him being 6 years old and whatever. And John says, no, he's Vanek 125 or whatever his fucking number is, and gives a speech about how he was a Spartan. And now he's accepted Vanek's death. Again, could have been an interesting episode if it had been more well written. Instead, it just kind of comes across like really out of place for a soldier with this much experience to be incapable of handling death of the people around him. And the fact that he had to be taught that lesson by a 16 or 17-year-old girl just makes it even more retarded. Soren and Lara arrive at the place where they think Kessler is. These two girls say they took him in, they're not giving him back. They essentially imply that they need help around the farm or whatever they're doing. And they say the kid was abused when he showed up, and they blame Soren and his wife, girlfriend, whatever. She gets pissed off and walks away. Soren says, I'll talk to him, it's negotiations. He gives this weird monologue about growing up lonely and how that would have killed him and blah, blah, blah. And then it just kind of ends and nothing really happens with it. And this is all just filler because this obviously leads to a kid and it's not him. Lara finds this kid with Kessler's helmet. Obviously, this isn't Kessler. There you go. We just spent over half the episode on them chasing nothing to extend the runtime, and I guess for drama, if anyone actually cared about any of these characters. I jumped ahead a little bit before because this show jumps back and forth so much. This is where Halsey and John get their little speeches. John lights him on fire. He's accepted Vanek's death. Huzzah. Halsey chases John down. John's set on getting revenge on Ackerson and Parangosky. Halsey's like, you're just going to get yourself killed. John had asked Halsey earlier why she chose him, and she says, I didn't choose you, I found you. And now we got a revenge story for John, completely straying away from anything resembling Halo even more. And again, this is the type of stuff that reinforces what I believe, that this show was originally something else and they just slapped Halo on it. This entire thing easily could have been some spy thriller, and that's what it feels like to me. Especially when you combine that with this little side story with Soren and Lara, which is like a kidnapped kid, them wanting to get it back. And then on top of this, in just a minute here, we're going to see that Kwan has magic. So this show feels like 3 different stories that weren't actually complete stories. And they were like, fuck it, let's throw them together and call it Halo. So this is the lady that we saw on the planet that got glassed. And she's magic because she is the planets and she talks to Kwan. This whole thing is so absurd. And what's there to even say about it? They're introducing fucking magic to Kwan, who I assume is going to be the one responsible for getting them to Halo somehow. This whole thing is just obscenely retarded, that they introduced literal magic into Halo. No explanation, no clue how it works. Just throw it in there. Fuck it, there's witches. We get one more scene with Maki and the Arbiter. I don't know what they did to her, but she looks insane this season. I thought she was at least cute last season, and they made her look crazy. She's afraid of what the Sanshium are going to do to them. Again, I don't really understand all this. None of it's explained, but she's clearly afraid. And the Arbiter's like faithful, so he's pretty much like, well, it is what it is. We failed. Cortana gives in, shows them the Halo, so they go there to protect herself and Maki. And I don't know how the Covenant ships work, but they're on the bridge, and the Arbiter says, oh, okay. And then he just redirects the ship. Like, you think they would have a whole crew? But he just sticks his hand around that orb thing, and there's another orb thing you can't see off screen. And then he's like, okay, time to go to Halo. The last episode of the season is called Halo. I'm assuming that's where they're all going to end up, in whatever abomination they're setting up to shit all over Combat Evolved for Season 3, which I still don't anticipate that it actually gets. And Lara is in full girl boss mode here. She turns into Negan, threatening the guy about where Kessler is. Soren stays outside because he's the squeamish one, apparently, even though he was a fucking Spartan and got his arm deformed. So she does this wannabe Negan act where she wraps this pipe thing in barbed wire and threatens the guy. It's so fucking cringy and unbelievable. And the guy gives in and says that the UNSC took her kid. And you'll see here at the end of the episode, they bring in the Spartan 3s. So I guess they're setting up Kessler being put in the next wave or something of Spartan 3s. John goes to Riz and he's trying to give her orders. And they make him just be a total unlikable dick in this season. And he's like, you can't give up Riz. We have to go back and get revenge for Vanek and blah, blah, blah. And take Reach back. And she is like, nah, fuck off. I'm good. And retires. Leaves her dog tags. Goes to hang out with the kids and stay on this planet. Like I said before, complete waste of a potential arc. This payoff just feels like nothing. Because they didn't really do anything to earn it. Even though we've had quite a bit of screen time with Riz, she's pretty much had no character. Riz retires, and Halsey's confused, and John's confused. And we get introduced to the Spartan 3s that Kai is now in charge of. I don't understand why they did the Spartan 3 arc this way. In the books, Mendez, who trained the Spartan 2s, trains the Spartan 3s alongside Kurt. Kurt was kidnapped by Ackerson, made it look like he disappeared off into space, and taken here to train the Spartan 3s to give them the best chance of survival. He picked Kurt because Kurt has the most personality among the Spartans. He's kind of the most human. So then this is going on, obviously, for decades alongside the Spartan 2s. Like the Spartan 2s were already active and in action, and the Spartan 3s were being developed over time in secret on Onyx. So now we see that the Spartan 3s are already adult looking. Now Kai is in charge of them. I don't know why they did it this way. I don't know why they picked Kai. She's like an awkward weirdo. And I don't even really know how they're going to use the Spartan 3s. The way that it looks or seems is that they just took them as kids, trained them. They're like a little bit better than normal humans, and now they're Spartan 3s. In the books, they don't have all the modifications that the Spartan 2s have. They have different ones. And they have all these adrenaline boosters and things that make them fight even harder if they're going to die, because they get sent on suicide missions to attack vital points to delay the Covenant and buy time. So they introduce it here, once again ripping off the lore in a shittier way. And I'm curious to see how they use it for the show. Maybe they'll send in all the Spartan 3s to take back Reach with Kai and John or something. I don't know. It's a shame because Ghost of Onyx could have been a season of its own. Kurt has one of the best deaths in all of Halo. The fact that they've managed to shit all over another book that they're not actually going to follow is super annoying. But that's the end of the episode. It's a real snooze fest. I can't believe I actually talked this much about it this time, because really not much happens. It's just kind of a lot of meandering shit to fill time. But I guess we'll see what happens next. I'm not optimistic, obviously. The show is in shambles. The world building is in tatters. The characters are flat, incompetent, ruined. All of it's just abysmal. If you watched it, let me know what you think. If you comment and it's not just an insult, I'll respond. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.